What's it like to win $1.6 million and then lose it all? Today we find out as we take a look at Texas Mike's high-stakes poker session from the $1 Million Game. This gigantic cash game lineup was a little bit different than the one that we covered the other day here on the channel. A couple great videos if you haven't seen them yet to definitely check out. But yeah, there were a couple of new faces here. We saw Haralabis Vulgaris join the game, well known for his sports takes and crypto takes. And of course, also a lot of poker in his past as well. And then we saw Jasper, a little bit less known about Jasper here, but a player that does play over on Hustler Casino Live somewhat often. And then Brittany hopped into the game. I think this is the first time that we've had a girl play on the $1 Million Game, and probably one of the highest stakes cash game sessions we have seen from a female player. The rest of the lineup certainly more well known. Of course, we have Texas Mike, needs no introduction after the performance he put on in the last game, and Alan Keating, another well-known high-stakes poker player. And finally, Nik Airball, although he did play briefly at the end of day one, he's in here from the start. And if you'd like to play in a game that has Nik Airball and myself, head on down to Lodge Card Club May 7th to play 1-2 with myself and Nik Airball. We're really going to be bringing our A game to that 1-2 session, I'm sure. Anyway, back to Texas Mike's giant session here. Exactly what happened. Well, for a couple hours, he played some smaller pots, and he was actually already down $400,000 or $500,000 before the big pot started rolling in. Let's go ahead and jump into our first hand. This hand begins with Brittany opening it up with Ace King, sitting on an $800,000 stack. Texas Mike calling in the hijack with King 8, suited a little bit loose here, but obviously no surprise. Texas Mike playing some loose hands pre. Alan Keating in the small blind calling with Queen 10 offsuit, and Haralabis getting in the mix there with the Jack 5. I suppose the pre-flop odds too good to resist, although this hand is certainly not a particularly premium holding. The flop comes out King Jack 9 2 spades, a beautiful flop here from Keating. And Brittany with the wise check to Texas Mike, who then bets King 8 of spades. Don't mind checking or betting here, they both make some sense. And Keating springs to life with the check raise with the Queen 10 with the nuts. Obviously a fine play to be raising here with the nuts. And back over to Texas Mike. You know, I think in this spot, when you do face this raise, I really don't mind the idea of just calling and letting your opponent either bluff or barrel or whatever it might be. Because if you get all in, if you go all in and you're called, you're going to be up against hands like King Jack or Queen 10 or pocket 9s. So this hand is actually much stronger to call and allow your opponent possibly a chance to try and bluff you on later streets. Obviously, you're going to know if you get there or not. If it bricks out, then perhaps you might be able to get away. Of course, it's unlikely with these stacks because I think probably Keating would have just jammed the turn. But the point remains, I probably prefer just to call on the flop. Although it can never be that bad to be jamming with your pair and flush draw, because even when you do run into some of those value bets, you're going to have a lot of equity. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with Texas Mike, the man runs it once. So let's go ahead and see how that goes. Quick side note, an excellent fold here from Brittany, not losing any money flopping a king with ace king up against hands that have her beat. You know, it's sad. How tough is poker getting? It seems like everyone's making the right play all the time. I mean, look at Brittany. For all we know, she spent a decade studying GTO ranges in Belarus. Actually, I feel pretty good saying that she hasn't. Maybe not. Anyway, back to Texas Mike here. He does run it one time with King of Spades, does not improve and get stacked. And unfortunately for Texas Mike, the floodgates are opening early. But this is not where the action ends. It is just heating up. In fact, Texas Mike goes on a flurry here upcoming, playing a ton of giant pots in rapid succession. Let's take a look at the next one. Just a few moments after this hand, Texas Mike ends up in yet another large confrontation. This time, Jasper opens up 8-7 of spades to $6,000 here at the cutoff. Action over to Texas Mike, who looks down at ace queen and is going to 3-bet to $29,000. This is actually a pretty good play from both players, I would say. And Jasper does make the call in position with his suited connector. The flop comes Queen 8-6 rainbow. Both players hit a piece here. Texas Mike, of course, with the best of it. Top pair, top kicker. And Jasper with his middle pair and backdoor straight draw also has a reasonable part of this flop. Texas Mike now decides to go ahead and value bet the flop here for a small bet. And then he does end up getting a call here from Jasper's middle pair, certainly the standard play. The turn is an ace, and Texas Mike has improved to top two pair. Despite already being down $1 million, looks like Texas Mike has a good chance to win another pot here as he turns his 2-pair up against Jasper's middle pair. The problem for him is going to be, can Jasper actually pay off with just a pair of 8s on the turn? The answer to that is yes, as Jasper does make the call. Bit loose here from Jasper, but he's not buying the story Texas Mike is selling, and perhaps he thinks that this man is on the ropes and is quite tilted from that hand before. The river comes in offsuit 4 here, backdoor flush draw bricks, and after some thought, Texas Mike decides to go all in with top 2-pair. I think this is a fine play. I don't mind betting a little bit smaller. This bet is a bit big relative to the pop, but all in all seems totally fine to me to try and value bet with your top 2-pair. Now over to Jasper. This is actually not a terrible river for Jasper. He blocks 7-5, which is something. And then he doesn't have some of the cards that you really don't want to have. You don't want a king or a jack or a 10 or a 9. Those are the cards your opponents would be looking to bluff with in this situation. So from a card removal perspective, I don't hate the idea of a call here, but I would really prefer to have something a bit stronger. Jasper can absolutely have hands like a queen, or maybe even 2-pair, or have turned an ace. I think this hand is probably a tad too loose to want to call a jam with, although if you think your opponent is tilting and you're worried that the money is heading out of town, you might want to put in the light call.
166,000. If Jasper calls, and he does call. Oh my gosh.
How much is that, 300?
That, unfortunately for Jasper, was not what was happening here, though, as Texas Mike wins a big pot. Maybe getting a little bit of momentum to roll back to even here, only down 500,000 as we move into the next hand. Once again, just a few moments later, guys. These happen just right after another. The tides have been turning as Texas Mike now has a $1 million stack and Jasper has lost a couple of pots. And Jasper opens it up with the 7-5 offsuit here in the cutoff. This is a bit too loose, although again, as we've seen in these high stakes games, too loose tends to be what everyone does. And you know what? At this point, who cares anymore? Let's just open up some hands and see what happens. The players behind him, some premium holdings. Alan Keating in there with a premier top of the line offsuit 1-gapper, the 4-deuce off getting in the mix. And now Haralabus in the small blind with a hand so good you might think it's aces, king 9 suited. And certainly Haralabus does like K9s, and so why not play K9 as well? Dare I say, is that a designer outfit? That dog seems like it's living a better life than everyone. But you know what that dog doesn't have? You. Because that makes Doug. Might be the worst joke I've ever told on this channel. This flop comes 7-4-3, 2 spades. A gigantic flop for Texas Mike, flopping the gutter to the nuts and the flush draw. Haralabus, the backdoor flush draw, Jasper top pair, and Keating's 4-deuce, I guess if you want to call it, has connected. So every player a little something, although the big hand here, of course, being Texas Mike. The action now checks to Jasper with 7-5. I really think with this hand, betting and checking are both fine. You certainly want to be doing more checking as you go multi-way, but Jasper does decide to bet here and build this pot, which definitely seems like a reasonable option. Keating calls with the 4-deuce. You don't call 4-deuce pre-flop to fold when you flop before. And now Texas Mike just smooth calls. You'd think this guy would have popped it. Very aggressive player, but he does decide to just call and look to play some turns, of which we get a king of diamonds. All players miss. And now Jasper decides to barrel the turn. I think I'd prefer to see a check here from Jasper, slow things down a bit and make sure you realize your equity. But he does decide to bet $50,000. And as luck would have it, he does have the best hand. Now, Keating does get out of the way with his pair of 4s and back over to Texas Mike. And Texas Mike springs to life with a turn check raise all in. This is a very difficult spot for Jasper, and he ultimately does let it go. I understand what he's thinking. If you're up against a hand like 2-pair or maybe king x of spades or something like that, then you're in pretty rough shape. And it shows why with 7-5, you probably want to just check the turn. This is a pretty nice spot from Texas Mike to find a check raise on the turn. Although generally speaking, I would say I tend to prefer check raising the flop. Another hand won here for Texas Mike, and we are chugging on the way back to even. Our next hand is a big pot between Jasper and Texas Mike. And you know what? You might be noticing a pattern. These guys went to war. You'd think it would have been Texas Mike and Alan Keating. And although they did play some pots together, I feel like I saw way more between Jasper and Texas Mike. Those guys were battling it out. Maybe a new rivalry emerging between these two players in this high stakes game. Anyway, in this hand, we see Airball raise under the gun with ace-queen offsuit. Airball getting in the mix. He played a big pot earlier. We're probably going to analyze tomorrow. But getting in the mix here with ace-queen, making it $4,000 to go. Jasper now 10-9 suited. He decides to call. Don't mind call. Don't mind 3-bet. Both are fine here from Jasper. Keating now 9-7 offsuit. He makes the call. Heralibus on the button. Folds ace-deuce, which in this game might make him, I don't know, Linus Love. Anyway, action now over to Texas Mike in the big blind ace-queen offsuit. He's putting in a squeeze. You know, Texas Mike came to play, making it $40,000 to go here. I don't mind call. I don't mind squeeze. Both options seem fine from Texas Mike. Now, Airball in a bit of an awkward situation with ace-queen. I don't really mind any of the options for Airball. He could fold. He could call. He could 4-bet. I'd probably lean a little more towards 4-bet with the amount of players behind. I don't mind 4-bet folding ace-queen. But at the same time, I don't mind call either. Now Jasper behind with 10-9 suited. Certainly a spot you're going to want to be calling. In position here against both players, getting some reasonable odds. Your hand plays well multi-way. I like this call here from Jasper. And then Keating does find a little bit of pre-flop discipline and folds pre. The flop comes out 8-6-4, 2 clubs. This is a giant flop for Jasper with his gut shot, straight flush draw. Also Keating, if he had called, would have flopped an open-ender. And both of the ace-queens brick pretty tremendously, although Texas Mike does have the ace of clubs. That's the nature of poker. Sometimes you miss and sometimes you win. Like, for example, the 20 people who are going to win 500 sweeps coins if you sign up on ClubWPT using code Doug and purchase gold coins. Whether you're an old member of the Code Doug team or a new one, anyone who purchases gold coins this week before Sunday will have a chance to win 500 sweeps coins from me to you for 20 people. I will also be doing the drawing on Sunday on my stream. I'm going to play the 11 Sleeps Coin Code Doug kickoff and then play some poker afterwards. So make sure to stop on by and check the stream to see if you've won. All right, back to the action here. So we see a giant flop for Jasper. You know, you wouldn't think this pot would end up being that big as the ace queens have both missed here. Action does check over, and now Jasper with his hand. I think it makes sense to bet here. You bet, you knock out equity. Your hand's extremely strong. Don't mind mixing in a check every once in a blue moon to have some strong hands that can check back and improve, but I do prefer to bet here on the flop, which is what Jasper goes for. He goes for a pretty healthy sized bet, 2/3 pot. I'd actually prefer to see a slightly smaller bet. I think he's trying to make sure he can have the odds to call if he gets check raised all in, but I would still probably prefer to see a smaller bet because this hand is so strong, you're going to be able to call for the rest of your money either way. Now Texas Mike gets a little frisky and decides to check raise it up, basically putting Jasper all in with just the ace high here. It's a bit of an adventurous play. I think I'd prefer to see Texas Mike just put in the check fold. Jasper does make the call, and we're off to the races. As always with Texas Mike, we're running it one time.
Here, looking for a 7 or a club, or a 9 or a 10, by the way. Suddenly Texas Mike now a 3-2 favorite. The river, the king of clubs. And Jasper wins it.
It's like, this one does 100 here. Just combo grabs. It's 100.
Texas Mike just did not believe him.
Are you always a one-time guy?
Yeah.
Our next hand's one of the biggest of the session, and it is an unfortunate one for Texas Mike. You know, have you ever thought about making a big pre-flop move with a hand you shouldn't? You know, you just think your opponent is full of shit, and despite the fact that your hand isn't that good, you put your foot in the gas because it's time to go win that pot, and your opponent has nothing. Rags. This is not one of those spots. In this hand, Texas Mike goes to war against aces.
This kid up 700,000, down 300,000, now up 200,000. He has been everything and more.
All in.
Keating said before, oh no, Texas Mike just went all in. Oh, and these guys have been going at it all day long. The raise, the 3-bet, the 4-bet from Keating. Jasper in great shape to win just under.
To be totally fair to Texas Mike, he was right about Alan Keating. Keating did not have it. Keating had the Queen 7. And in fact, Texas Mike had him dominated. But the bad news for Texas Mike is when you're up against aces, ace 7 suited, really not a particularly good hand, having just 13% here pre-flop to win this pot. Gonna have to get extremely lucky to win this one. He does flop a 7, giving him some equity. Another 7 will win the pot for Texas Mike. And the turn gives him a gut shot to chop. So some ways this could go better for him. But unfortunately, the River King cements it, and Jasper winning a $1 million pot off of Texas Mike. We can see in the top right corner, Texas Mike now down $1.5 million. Again, we are just a few hours into the session, and we have way more pots coming your way. Some giant pots for Texas Mike as we continue to dive into his session. This would not be the only time that Texas Mike makes a pre-flop maneuver that goes awry. Unfortunately for him, he gets the 7 deuce, which usually most people would fold, and he decides to 4-bet jam it versus Alan Keating, and Keating's got kings. Oh, Texas Mike. Not like this.
Set up.
Ouch.
Cooler.
Did you learn how to deal that one, Magic Prison?
615K in the middle. Texas Mike already looking for a rebuy. Well, he will be felted. Top set. Keating.
Five.
Texas Mike needs runner to make it straight.
Five. One time.
And the hand is over.
While we're about 2/3 of the way through the session, we have lots of gigantic hands coming up for you, including this one, where Peter looks down at aces and Texas Mike has pocket jacks. I'll note there's been some chatter about Peter going on a lot of walks away from the table, including some commenters calling him Parking Lot Peter. I don't know what's going on. I have no clue why he's away from the table. I don't know how often he's away from the table, but I will say that it is being noted by people that Peter tends to be a little bit AFK when he's playing in some of these games. Not AFK in this hand, though, as he looks down at the pocket aces on a $1 million stack, makes it $4,000 to go. And now Texas Mike pocket jacks here in the cutoff, has decided how to play them. He decides just to go for the call. Now, this hand you certainly want to mainly 3-bet, but it is nice to sometimes trap because then you have some hands that are a bit stronger than what people might think pre-flop. And now Jasper in the small blind bumps it up, $30,000 to go with the ace-9. A little bit loose here from Jasper, probably a hand you want to just fold, although maybe he thinks his opponents are just really wide and he can take this one down pre-flop. Back over to Peter, pocket aces. I'd like to see a 4-bet here with such a strong holding, and he goes for $80,000 to go. This looks like a nice play from Peter. Now Texas Mike, pocket jacks, does put the call in, and we have a little bit of pre-flop antics. What are these guys doing? Isn't it beautiful? These guys only share one language. Gambling. Beautiful. Back to the hand, and we have a gift from the gods for Texas Mike. Stuck huge, flopping a set of jacks. Wait, this happened to me recently.
You know what JC's thinking about? Code Doug and the fucking Mirage.
Head on down now to ClubWPT Gold and use code Doug today.
Huge flop for Texas Mike. Peter now with aces has to decide what he wants to do. I like the idea of kicking it off with a flop bet. You want to build this pot with your aces. Plenty of hands to get value from, obviously, and the only hand you lose to is pocket jacks, which is unfortunately what Texas Mike has. But I think you should start off with about a 1/3 or 1/4 pot bet here, and Peter does do that. $70,000 to go. Now for Texas Mike, I don't think you really want to raise this hand. You want to trap and let your opponent barrel, and he decides to call. We're actually playing for once a normal hand of poker with 2 good hands. Interesting to see on the $1 million game. The turn is a king, and now Peter barrels, $125,000 to go, setting up for a river jam. This looks like a nice bet to me, and Texas Mike does make the call. $600,000 out there. We take a river. It's an offsuit 8. Beautiful board for Texas Mike, and probably not the worst run out here for Peter. He might be thinking about all of the hands he can get value from. He does jam and gets the bad news as Texas Mike, with a set, wins a $1.2 million pot, back on the road to even. I've said that a few times. It's a windy road, poker. A lot of turns and twists and hills. A lot of hills. Our session continues. Jasper now out of the game, and Peter making his triumphant return to the $1 million game at the 5-hour, 30-minute mark. After having played that ace, his hand must be a little bit tilted, and we see a pot here between Texas Mike and Alan Keating. The action in this hand a little bit different. We're doing a side table shot. We see Keating raise it up here in the cutoff, and Texas Mike making the call in the big blind. We take a flop. The graphics not showing very well for this hand, so a little bit of guessing from me. but we see a $15,000 bet from Alan Keating, a check raise from Texas Mike to what seems to be $65,000, and we have a giant pot developing. As the graphics pop up, we can see that Texas Mike has ace-6 of clubs, flopping a pair and the nut flush draw, and Keating with top set pocket kings. Man, this guy's made some gigantic hands in this session. Facing a $120,000 bet here from Texas Mike. How does he want to play it? I can see some logic both ways. I think raising has a lot of merit. Build this pot, give yourself a chance to win all of the money on this gigantic stack. Or you can just call and give Texas Mike a chance to hang himself. Keating does go for just the call here, smooth calling the pocket kings and keeping his opponent in the pot. On this offsuit 4 river, not the river you want to see if you're Texas Mike. You were hoping for a club. Now you barely have any showdown value. Keating loads up and fires the river. $450,000 to go. There are some hands that could make sense for Texas Mike to think he's beating. 9-7, maybe some kind of middling clubs. There are certainly some hands out there that he might be ahead of. But at the same time, when you have the ace of clubs, it's not a particularly good bluff catcher as you block your opponent from having the nut flush draw. What will Texas Mike do here in this difficult river scenario? After a long think, Texas Mike decides to make the call with a pair of 6s. I'd really like to see Texas Mike just let this one go. I think he can have plenty of better hands. Although I can see some possible hands he might think are bluffing. Unfortunately, this $1.3 million pot is being shipped Alan Keating's way. Our last big pot here from Texas Mike sees Alan Keating open the button up with 6-5 offsuit, and Texas Mike defend the straddle with the Jack 10. 7-4 deuce, 2 spades. A very good flop here for Alan Keating as he flops his open-ended straight draw. Texas Mike checks. Keating bets the flop, and I'd really like to see Texas Mike just check fold this. Obviously, when Jack 10 improves, it's pretty hard to see, which makes it a bit attractive to float. But versus this flop size, I don't think this hand has enough equity to continue. Texas Mike has other ideas. He does make the check call and is rewarded. A 10 on the turn for Texas Mike now, improving to top pair. Checking once again over to Alan Keating, who's with his 6-high straight draw. I absolutely love barreling in these spots. If your opponent folds, it's great for you. And if your opponent continues, you have equity and you have 6-high. So anything that they fold, you're probably behind. He bets $40,000 here on the turn. And now Texas Mike with top pair has to decide whether he wants to just call or raise. I usually prefer just to call here, but Texas Mike has other ideas, making it $120,000 to go. We're taking it to the streets. And you gotta love the cojones to be down this much money and still taking it to the streets. Win or lose, Texas Mike has my respect. Although that's not worth that much. I can't even beat 2-4 in ClubWPT Gold. But back to the hand. Keating now, 6-high straight draw. What does he want to do? I think probably call here makes the most sense. You're in position. You can play some rivers. You could improve. And he does make the call. $300,000 out there heading into the river. And it is a board pairing 4. All of the draws brick. Keating has 6-high. How does Texas Mike want to play this one? He sets the trap, checking the river. I love this play from Texas Mike. You unblock a bunch of the draws. Give your opponent a chance to bluff here. And Keating is going to fall in. 6-high. Fires out $300,000 on this river. Once again, Texas Mike back in the tank. What will he do facing this river bet? He makes the call and a $900,000 pot getting shipped Texas Mike's way. After that hand, Texas Mike called it a day, and let's see where things ended up. We see Texas Mike playing over half his hand, still a very respectable 53% VPIP. But that's where the good news is going to end for Texas Mike, losing back $1.72 million. A rough session, although really when you think about it, at the end of this week, he's still pretty much even as he came in and won 1.6 in the first day. Peter, the only other loser, losing $600,000 in not all that long. And then we see a variety of other players who won. Haralabus, Keating, Airball, Brittany, Jasper, and of course Haralabus being the big winner at plus 800K, and another nice session from Keating and Airball. Listen, if you want to not miss all of the exciting updates from this game and many more, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. If you turn on that little bell, you'll make sure to not miss my videos. I see only a very small percentage of people use that feature. Turn it on so you know when I'm posting videos. Look, you guys like this content. I like making it for you. Go ahead and join the team.